Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of our attendees joining us today for this latest Data Science Central webinar. This is Bill Voorhees, your host. I'm the editorial director with Data Science Central and also chief data scientist for Data Magnum. So I'd like to start off our event today by thanking SAS for sponsoring today's event. SAS is a longtime supporter of the Data Science Central community, and we're honored to have them sponsoring our event today. I'd also like to take this opportunity to mention and show our appreciation for some of our other recent sponsors, including Tableau, IBM, Qlik, Databricks, and SAP, to name just a few. Now, past webinars are available on demand at datasciencecentral.com, and if you haven't had the opportunity to view them, I encourage you to take a look. They provide a very useful insight into a wide variety of topics of interest to our data science community. Now, today's webinar is entitled Advanced Tool for Dynamic Visual Analytics, and that'll be presented by SAS. Now, before we begin the webinar, I'd like to briefly review the format of today's event. Today's event will be an hour long. We have two presenters who I'll introduce in just a minute. There'll be 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A following the presentation. And this event is being recorded and will be available on datasciencecentral.com later this afternoon following today's live event. Now, I'd also like to encourage our attendees to provide questions throughout the presentation, as we'll be reviewing and presenting them on your behalf during the Q&A portion of today's event. Well, I'm very pleased to introduce today's speakers, Tapan Patel and Steve Melgren with SAS. Now, Tapan is Principal Product Marketing Manager at SAS. With more than 17 years in enterprise software market, he currently leads global marketing efforts at SAS for business intelligence and predictive analytics topics, and the SAS Visual Analytics and Visual Statistics products. Now, Tapan works closely with customers, analysts, press and media, and thought leaders. And as a content marketer and speaker, he specializes in topics related to visual data discovery, self-service analytics, and data-driven decisions. Now, prior to SAS, Tapan worked in product management, market research, and technology strategy roles. Now, Steve is a senior solutions architect at SAS, who's been working with SAS Visual Analytics for the past 5 years. He works with customers and partners to identify and address their challenges with self-service visualization and analytics. Now, Steve helps business analysts uncover insights from their data, provide answers to complex questions, and distribute results to a diverse set of customers, all while helping organizations expand their use and understanding of analytics. Steve has a strong background in business intelligence, finance, enablement, sales, and marketing. So Tapan, Steve, hey, thanks for being with us today. We're looking forward to your presentation. Now, as you journey through the age of self-service analytics, it's important to understand and explore your data in impactful new ways. There are critical drivers for making better decisions. Can you see them? Why did something happen? Have you examined all the options and uncovered opportunities hidden deep in your data? So join us today for today's Data Science Central webinar to see the new version of SAS Visual Analytics. It introduces new data visualizations, including third-party custom ones, a refined user experience to improve productivity, self-service data preparation, and the power of location analytics to visualize data in new contexts. Now, these enhancements will help you automatically highlight and understand key relationships, outliers, clusters, and more in your data, revealing vital insights that inspire action. So Tapan, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can begin as soon as you're ready to go.
Thank you, Bill. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We appreciate your taking time out of your busy schedules and joining with us today. I am going to introduce the topic, introduce the product line, which is SAS Visual Analytics, with a few set of slides in the beginning. And that will help us, everybody, to set the stage for 30-minute worth of product demonstration to be followed up. So let's kick it off. Organizations pursue data and analytics strategies and projects and activities for a range of reasons or drivers. Many times they are trying to build competitive advantage with new products or solutions, or they're trying to improve customer experience or gain new customers, or they are trying to make internal processes efficient or grow revenue or cut cost. Of course, they have high hopes from their data and analytics programs. Whatever their motivation or business driver is, companies have found mixed successes. According to McKinsey, 86% of executives say that organizations have been, at best, only somewhat effective at meeting their primary objective from their data and analytics program, including more than 1/4 who are saying that they have been ineffective. For some of these successes and failures, technology isn't necessary to blame every time. Rather, there are a variety of different reasons. Many times, organizations overlook hurdles related to people and processes also. So proper definition of your project, strong leadership kind of support, realistic budgets, right organizational structure, having the right people on the job are also contributing to many of these failures. So in order to determine the value from your business intelligence and analytics initiatives, of course, you might have a variety of different challenges. Some of the key ones are highlighted over here. First and foremost, many customers and partners come to us and mention that data is frequently a problem. Having access to relevant data, having access to reliable data, having access to sufficient data is important. How can they spend less time on data preparation? So having to derive value from data, from quality data, which can be trusted in a quickly and expeditiously kind of a manner is important. The second is, business users and business analysts do not want to wait for creating content. They don't want to wait for creating interactive reports or dashboards or explorations. They want to jump in then and there and start working and share those insights as quickly as possible. And then as they create those content, how effective are they in frontline staff and executives and sales and service organizations to use it in a quick kind of a manner? So having those insights, creating those insights is equally important, but sharing those and collaborating on those is also important. We want them to be empowered with insights such that they avoid creating silos, either through spreadsheets or multiple tools tackling the same type of problems. And then finally, as they put those insights in hands of more users, how can they make sure that there's an appropriate data and content governance? So having that right balance between flexibility and providing the right amount of governance is important to keep both IT and business management happy and be productive. So let's look at from a different perspective. We looked at the process and challenges point of view. Let's look at from a people dimension kind of point of view. So having reporting or dashboards or data exploration or predictive analytics, of course, there's a continuum of role there. There are different types of capabilities involved. There are different types of skill sets involved. There are different types of needs around the data. There are different types of problems they're trying to tackle. But fundamentally, having a collaboration and having an effective way of traditional business intelligence type of roles playing nicely with the analyst and citizen data scientists, and how can they also play effectively with bringing data scientists into the mold is important. So if we go from the left to right, the level of analysis, of course, increases. We are talking about going from simple and easy to read reporting and dashboards, which tells you what is happening and what has happened right now in my business. If something is wrong, I'm interested in identifying why something is wrong. And that's the domain of typically of an analyst with a functional expertise or a citizen data scientist kind of a role. Over there, you're trying to find relationships and outliers and patterns. And once they have tried to understood why is it important or why is something wrong, then they can effectively help to find out, whether future outcomes would be useful in identifying those relationships and those factors and those variables. And then as you go into the data scientist type of role, which are far and few between, you are more interested in using analytical and machine learning kind of techniques. You are more interested in doing detailed, specialized kind of analysis with lots of iterative kind of analysis because you have specific problem in mind to solve. So having that spectrum of this functional and different types of roles involved in it is equally important to understand and to get value from your traditional BI kind of initiative. And as you go and mature your analytic skill sets and your analytical needs and your analytical processes, how can different types of roles can also take advantage out of it. So having that continuum, supporting that different types of functional needs is where we add a lot of value. So SAS Visual Analytics fits that spectrum, going from descriptive to diagnostic to predictive, for example. It supports a variety of different functional elements or components. Some of them are highlighted over here. We are going to go into each one of those in detail in the product demonstration and show the value of how SAS Visual Analytics gives that end-to-end kind of a workflow, whether it comes from a self-service data prep to visual discovery to interactive reporting to using self-service analytics without any kind of programming needs. And once that content has been created, how can that content be shared with a variety of different audiences, through a variety of different channels, whether it is Microsoft Office application, web-based applications, portal-based applications, or mobile-based applications. So having that spectrum of different types of capabilities, having the spectrum of asking different types of questions, having the spectrum of meeting the needs of different types of audiences is where SAS Visual Analytics shines, and that is where the differentiation comes in, giving our customers and prospects, little or no reason to look elsewhere for special kind of BI and analytic needs. So having said that, let me go into a little bit more detail into some of the other components which are also important. The content creation is equally important as you saw on the last slide, where there are different ways for creating content, whether it's a reporting or dashboards or analytics or exploration. The value you're going to get is how can you share and collaborate and socialize on that content? How can you enhance the interpretation of results? How can you help the frontline staff and the executives and the decision makers to decide on the best resulting kind of actions? The only way to do that is when you have those insights, let it be interactive, let it be more collaborative, such that everybody can lead, it can lead everybody to conclusions and recommended set of actions. Taking a step further, SAS Visual Analytics, as I mentioned, is our flagship data discovery, exploration, and reporting product. We are coming out with a next release of SAS Visual Analytics 8.2. The focus over there is to continue to enhance on bringing new set of visualization to help you further explore and understand your data. We are bringing in integration with third-party open source libraries like D3 and Google Charts and C3 visualization. So you can put those side by side with the visualizations already available natively in SAS Visual Analytics using the same data. We embarked on the path of location analytics and bringing in the where dimension is part of your analysis. So if you're going to ask the questions around why, what, when, how, why not also ask the question around where? Because location analytics taps into the power of bringing in demographic data, bringing in geolocation data from a variety of different data sources to enrich your analysis. So having the ability to do location analytics in addition to your traditional ones gives you a different perspective, a new context, and adds a richer kind of a perspective. And then finally, the traditional reporting type of, enhancements are also available to our customers and prospects. How can I enhance my interactions, whether it is your actions, your links, your parameters, synchronizing your prompt values? How can you improve your automatic actions between different types of objects? Those type of capabilities have been added to the product line. And then finally, calculations are important in a traditional reporting kind of a sense. How can I suppress data, for example? How can I add new types of calculations and enhance the value of your reporting and your dashboards? So those are some of the capabilities from a latest release of SAS Visual Analytics. And the best way to see and feel and look and interact with those is through a product demonstration. So I am going to pass it on to Steve at this point to take us through this journey of SAS Visual Analytics and some of the new features we have added in there.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you, Tapan. My name is Steve Melgren, as mentioned before, and I'll be leading you through probably about the next 30 minutes of a hands-on demo. I'm really excited to walk through a quick demonstration of the new version of SAS Visual Analytics. It's our single solution for interactive reporting and dashboards, visual data discovery, self-service analytics, and it's all within a scalable in-memory environment. So basically what it's going to do is help to simplify the creation and use of these dynamic visualizations. So today what we're going to do is we're going to start off with an interactive report and dashboard using data related to web traffic. And then we're going to move on to another set of data to showcase the power of location analytics, because we've made a lot of improvements when it comes to location analytics, and we want to make sure that we highlight all of those. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a second. Okay, so I assume everybody can see my screen. If not, tap and let me know. But I should be on the first page of my dashboard.
So right now I'm looking at the product demonstration screen, Steve.
Oh, you are?
Steve, your audience view is fine. Go right ahead.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so what we're looking at here is it's a dashboard. So as I said, this is related to web traffic. So as customers or potential customers come to a website, how do they get there? Do they just type in your name, like datasciencecentral.com, SAS.com? That would be considered a direct visit. Organic search. Do you go to Google and search for something like Visual Analytics and you find it that way, or through a paid search? So there's different ways that people would come in there, and and there's different environments that they're coming from. So real quickly, what we're doing here is we're looking at a dashboard where if I click on this, the blue spot here, which is direct visit, so this is all the information related to people who came in directly in there. So what type of environments were they coming from? What kind of browser were they coming from? Within that browser, what was their browser version? And sometimes even things like that, where they came from, the browsers, et cetera, you can start to infer some demographic information in there. So as you see, as I'm clicking through here, basically the point of this screen here is to show the interactivity of, if I'm looking at a slice of my data, I can sort of zero in and see the attributes of what's going on there. If I go to another screen here, what I'm doing here is I'm looking at, so if we think about people coming to a website, this tree map here is a representation of where are those people coming in from. So as I click on one of these countries, say Canada, what I've done over here on the right is we have this new object called a key value object, and basically it highlights something that's going to be important, whether it's a category or a value or both. So as I click on, say, Japan, it'll tell me the city with the highest average page views, or with the lowest. And as I'm clicking through here, it's dynamically going ahead and doing that. And so these key values are really important because they draw your attention to what it is that you're looking at if you're trying to zero in on potentially a city or something like that. So as I go through here and I double click on my United States, and now I have my states here, I can click on California. Within California, the highest average page views, as you can see on the right, was in La Jolla, and the lowest was a city called Auburn. So this is just showing a way to kind of manipulate your way through the data. So I'm drilling up, or I'm drilling down, and I can also drill my way back up to see what the information is. And every time I click on something, everything down below is being interactive as well. One of the things that you can do, because maybe you don't want to just zero in on filtering, you can also do what we call a link selection or a brush. So if I click on, say, this slice of the pie, hey, I want to know people who have had graduate school, where do they lay as far as inferred demographics? So it overlays it with the percentage of the total. So if I click on college grads, you'd say most of them are sort of upper mid when it comes to inferred income. So wanted to kind of give you a sense of how you can manipulate the data. So what I've done so far is sort of walk through, sort of some standard dashboarding capabilities. But we're talking about web traffic here. So one of the things I wanted to show was a path analysis. Some of you may know this as a Sankey diagram. In fact, in a previous release of SAS, it was called a Sankey diagram, and now it's called path analysis. It's the same functionality. So basically what it is it displays the flows of data from one event to another as a series of paths, and the thickness of each line represents the volume. So think of this as maybe a subset of of web traffic coming into your site. So whether that subset is by city or a time snippet or something like that, and you can see that people came in through the welcome screen, and then once they were at the welcome screen, where did they go? They went, here's the basic path that they went to. And if you wanted to zero in on, hey, let me see people that checked out, and it'll zero in on that path, on that event within the path. Or if you wanted to see, hey, where did people search? Because maybe a search is a clue that maybe your web page isn't designed properly, and you might need to do some research, because if people are constantly searching from that site, maybe they're not understanding what they're looking at. So what this path analysis is allowing you to do is, like I said, follow that sequence of events through. So this is following the journey of a prospect or customer going through your web pages. Now, another really powerful way of using this is within, say, education. So maybe a counselor at a college. They could go out there and plot the path of all of their students and find out, hey, are people transferring? Are they dropping out of school? And if so, why? They can follow the path, and maybe there's a common thread between that. So you can visualize the path of all of your students, if you will, and you can start to gain some insights to what's going on there. So path analysis is a very powerful tool when it comes to understanding sequence of events. So if we're going through here and we're looking at web information, one of the things I wanted to point out here was correlations. So a correlation is basically showing the strength of a linear relationship between two variables. But there's obviously more than two variables here. There's things like page views and some inferred statistics and how long were you on the pages and that sort of thing. So what SAS can do is we can do these correlations of all the measures against all the measures. So instead of just doing one measure against another, we can do a whole bunch of them. And I wanted to kind of show you the end result here, but I'm going to go into edit mode and show you how easy it is to kind of create a correlation with the measures that you have in your data that's available to you. I'm going to go ahead and click on this blank page here. And real quick, the 2-second elevator pitch on the layout of this. So now we're in sort of the design mode. So this middle part is your palette, where you're going to create something. The left-hand side relates to your data. What is your data elements, or excuse me, what are your data elements? What objects do you want to bring in? And the right-hand side are more things like properties related to what you're trying to do. So if I go in here and look at, these are all my categories at top, and now I'm looking at my measures. So these are all numeric variables. I'm going to go ahead and grab all of these and just drag those in. And what SAS is going to do is SAS knows that if measures, that you're most likely going to want to do a correlation. So it's going to auto chart that. And then what we can do is I'm going to go ahead and, oops, excuse me, I'm going to take out this one. There's this gray bar through here that just means there's some missing values in there. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Clean up one more thing. I'm going to rotate the axis. So now we can look at this. And that's how quickly we can go ahead and create this correlation matrix and sort of identify the strength of a relationship between two variables. So the darker the color, the stronger the relationship. The lighter the color, the weaker the relationship between those two variables. So if you think about a page or your journey into a website, maybe there's something here like page views. Is there a correlation between how many pages you view and whether or not you download a white paper? So one of the things you can do if you want to get some more information on that intersection of that one. So I could right click, and now I can start exposing other predictive analytics things. So I could do, launch into a decision tree or a cluster or one of these other items here. But I'm just going to go into a heat map so I can plot this out. So this heat map is actually going to show me the sort of the linear relationship between the points that go through here. So if I go on here, and I'm going to, that fit line, I'm going to go ahead, instead of having linear, I'm just going to take it out so we can see these bins a little bit. So each one of these bins, so if I click on that one, what that's saying is there's 36 events within the bin of basically downloading 3 white papers and visiting pages between 70 and 90 different pages. So that's kind of what it gives you. So one of the things you can do within this information is maybe I want to go through here and look at those, and I've determined that maybe those are outliers. I can go out here and say I want to exclude that, and now it's filtered the data, it's removed those, and now I get a better sense of my distribution, my strength of relationship between those two variables. Okay, so as we go through our journey and starting to think about the web data, maybe one of the things we want to do is we want to forecast the page views. How many pages are going to be viewed on our website? So what we're looking at here is by visitor date, what date did they come, and then what are the page views. The circles here are the actual values, and the line is the forecasted amount. It's the model. And what SAS is going to do when it comes to a forecast, it's going to go ahead and run 6 different forecasting algorithms, find the champion one, compare all 6 of those, produce a champion model, and present that to you as your result. So one thing that may be somewhat obvious is that forecasts don't happen in a vacuum. So maybe it's also determined on, what is it? Oops. Let's spell it right. So these are just flags that are out here to, whether, how did they come into the website. So what I'm dragging in here are underlying factors. So these are variables out there. Think about those things in the correlations, were they correlated or not. But these are trying to determine, do these factors impact the forecast that I'm going to do? And remember, we were working on the white page before, or we zeroed in on that. So if I go into here and pick out my white paper download and add that, for my page views, if I'm trying to forecast that, it looks like this, whether or not you came in through a blog was the one underlying factor that sort of influenced that. But what if I wanted to change that to unique page views? So now I'm forecasting a different element. There's my historical information. There's my forecast. And I neglected to mention that the band there, that's a confidence band as you go out on your forecast. But you'll notice that now that I'm forecasting something else, underlying factors are now different, whether or not you came in through organic search or paid search. So one of the last things I'll show here on the forecast is, what if? What if I want to increase my unique page views like this? Just move up those 3. We're trying to do some sort of marketing event or something like that. That's my goal. I'm going to do some goal seeking. And I know that these are going to help influence my forecast, and I can just go ahead and apply that. And what it's saying is for me to reach this goal, I would have to also increase the number of paid searches that came to my website by that amount. So it kind of lets you know that your forecast doesn't happen in a vacuum. and I'm going to go ahead and undo that and close that. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. And also, you can dynamically change things. So as you go through here, you can add and subtract variables to see what might be an impact to you. So I kind of quickly went through sort of the reporting and dashboarding and a little bit of predictive analytics to kind of give you a sense of, what's out there from a reporting and dashboarding concept. Let me go ahead and open. So I'm going to switch gears here, and I'm going to go into our geo location analytics. So one of the first things I want to do here is, before I do anything, is we get asked a lot. Okay, when we do demos, it's like, well, how do I bring my data in? So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go into data, into this report. I just want to add a data source. So if it was available, if it was in a server, if I brought it in previously, I could just grab it. Otherwise, I can go ahead and import it. I could browse it through my local file, but I just happen to have it over here on my desktop. I'm just going to drag it over there. So now I dragged in an Excel file. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to import it. So that's how easy it is to import. Now, one thing I'm not going to have time to show today, but also wanted to mention was when it comes to sort of the data preparation. I brought the data in, but maybe the data wasn't clean, or maybe I wanted to transform it or wanted to do some joins. We have the data preparation tool within SAS Visual Analytics to go ahead and do a lot of your data preparation responsibilities that you might have. Okay, so what I've done here is I've brought in my data. So it's basically by state, and there's one line per state, and then it has a handful of measures related to census information or congressional districts. So if I go in here and just drag in state, I'm looking at it and it's like, okay, the frequency is 1. So that's not going to do me a whole lot of good. So I undid that. What I want to do is I'm going to change this so that Visual Analytics knows that this category is a geography item. And the reason I'm stopping and going through this is because we're going to be leveraging other aspects of how to bring geography in, and I wanted to kind of point them out while I was here. So predefined geographic names and codes. So what I want to do is SAS comes out of the box with some predefined things. Country, state, U.S. state names, U.S. state abbreviations, zip codes, those kind of things. So if I click state names, and you'll notice it does some data quality, and it says, hey, I mapped 100%. So based on the names in my data, Arizona, Alabama, Georgia, SAS Visual Analytics knows how to present that on a map, not only as a point, but also as the shape of the state. And you'll see that in just a second. There's also other options here when it comes to geo, because I'm going to spend probably the next 5 or 10 minutes on geography, where you can also do custom coordinates. And I'll have an example next when custom coordinates meaning latitude and longitude. If your data has latitude and longitude, then you can use that to plot it on a map. And then finally, polygon shapes. So what I'm showing you here is the wizard. So if you have an element that you want to map, you define, is it a predefined one that SAS knows how to deal with, or is it custom coordinates like latitude and longitude, or is it custom shape files like congressional district or school districts, which is the example that I'll show you. So I go through there. I define that as a state. Now I go in here and I want to change this from bubbles to regions. Okay, so those are the shapes. So just based on the name and saying I want to define my state name as a custom or a chloropleth, if you will, it'll define it like that. Now what I can do is I can also change the color from frequency to say census population per house seat in 2010. So once again, there's a sliding scale. So the lighter to the darker. So the darker it is, it means this state, meaning Montana, has the highest population per house seat based on the 2010 redistricting for your congressional districts. Now, if I'm trying to find this 526, is it Wyoming? Nope, that's 563. So what I might want to do then is add a list table. Now here's I haven't showed you this, but here's a list of all the different graph objects that we have in there. And we're definitely not going to be able to get through all of them, but there's a substantial amount of objects in here. go ahead and do my list table. And what I want to do is I'm going to grab all the elements that are in here. I'm going to drag this into my table. And I look at the table and it's like, I don't really need frequency. I'm going to go ahead and move that. I really want my ranking to be my first column after the state name. And then I want to sort it by this, what I'm displaying here. Now what I'd really like is if I clicked on, this 526, oh, it's Rhode Island. No wonder I couldn't see it. But I'd like it to display on this map. So this is what Tapan had mentioned. We have those automatic actions. So I can go out here and I can say automatically link everything together. And in this case, it's called a one-way filter. So if I click on, say, Rhode Island, it's going to zoom in and filter just on Rhode Island. But what if I also want to bring in North Dakota and Texas? Right? So it filters in and brought in those three. And it'll, as I hover over it, it tells you, what the total census population per house seat was. Okay. But what if I wanted to show all of the colors for all the states and not sort of filter it out? Well, what I can do is I can change that to what we call link selection or a brush. I could do that North Dakota and Texas. And you can see that the whole map is there, and now I've sort of just highlighted what it is. So what I was trying to get across here was how easy it is to identify elements as geography and how easy it is to bring in some objects, create a quick report, and get those things linking together, and then go ahead and show that in a report. Moving on with some other things with geography. What I'm doing here is I'm zooming in. So there's this concept called point clustering, and you can see the bubbles, they're sort of merging together. So instead of having a million dots spread out over there, it sort of tells you how many units are within a general location, and then you can zoom in or zoom out to get a sense of where things are. So I think that was a new feature that's out there that's pretty handy because it helps to unclutter some things and allows you to show more points on a map than you could previously. Okay, so here we've got a map, and this happens to be accident data, and this happens to be in my neck of the woods up over in Arizona. So if I look at these, all these little icons for cars are actually locations of an accident. So if I wanted to look at this, I could click on that. It's like, well, I want to get some information on that. Okay, it tells me there's a case number, there's weather, light conditions, what were the age of the drivers, and there's also latitude and longitude, and that'll be important in just a second. So that's some detail information there. But what if I wanted to take a look and see, show me all the hospitals that are located on this map? Did I spell that wrong? Try that again. There, so it's plotting all the hospitals that are on the map, that are on the view. So now I know, okay, if I wanted to do this, and I can say, give me everything within 10 miles. I'll say, okay. It looks like there's 2 hospitals within 10 miles of this one accident site. Well, the reality is, this is as the crow flies. You really need to be taking the surface roads. So to get there, I'd really need to do travel distance and say, let's do 10 miles. And the reason I'm doing this, and now it'll do the actual shape of that. It did. I must have hit the wrong button there. Sorry about that. Oh, that's interesting. Oops, excuse me. Okay, so that part wasn't working at this point. So let me jump on to, okay, if I wanted more information related to this point, what if I go ahead and if I'm an insurance adjuster and I want to see, what does that intersection look like, right? So we've got these different intersections here. This is where Tapan had mentioned we have the integration with third-party visualizations. So now if I click on an accident site, like click on this one here, right? So now it's linked in with Google Street View. And that's pretty powerful because now I can go ahead and look at, well, this is the intersection of where this accident occurred. The latitude and longitude was sort of in that accident report that was out there. I'm going to see if it works on this screen. It's not. Okay, so and the way we do that is, we take Google Street View and we go ahead and do some minor tweaks to the JavaScript. We basically add an event listener and we add a function, and what happens if that event occurs, and that's how we integrate these two. So my data was right here on the left. It had latitude and longitude. When I click on one of those points, the Google Street View will show up where that location is. And that's a really powerful tool to be able to go ahead and integrate third-party tools because not everybody can afford to do Street View for the entire country. You need vast resources at Google to be able to do that. But if we can leverage what they have, it's a third-party tool, and then we integrate it in with our data. I mean, that's a win for everybody. Okay, so I'm going to move on to this screen here. So I mentioned there's 3 ways to bring in geographic data. There was the predefined, like the state names. There was the latitude and longitude, which was the custom. And then there was also these shape files. So in this case, what I did is I downloaded shape files from this website. Very common ones would be census.gov and all those things where you can get shape files for school districts, congressional districts. Maybe your company actually has shape files for sales regions and territories and things like that. So basically what you're going to do is you go out to a website, you click on that, download the shape files. After a few clicks and a handful of minutes, you'd be able to map that in and be able to show this within SAS Visual Analytics. It's a really powerful tool. And I've already set this up where I have a map, and I've got my my list table to the left. So if I click on, say, this one, it'll show up over here. Or if I click on this one, it'll show up over there. It's kind of interesting. So I colored this based on the information from Arizona school districts, which was, what was the highest and lowest grade. And I thought it was interesting that some they stopped at 8th grade. And then, kind of looking at it a little bit further, I realized that these are just elementary school districts. And then there's an overlaying high school district. So that was something I didn't really understand because where I live, they only have one school district for everything. So you can see that I'm clicking on this. I'm interacting with a shape file that was brought in or downloaded and then quickly brought in and mapped into the data that I have out there. That's a pretty powerful tool. I'm going to sort of circle back a little bit when we were talking about third-party tools. So this is another one. So this is a Google chart. So this is an org chart. And basically these are just, you can end up creating your own libraries for these third-party tools, and people within your organization can just sort of leverage them. So once again, this is data. This down here is data from an organization, and I've loaded that data into SAS Visual Analytics. And by clicking on this, it's going to highlight where that person resides within this org chart. So this top part, it's a third-party object produced by, it's a Google chart, Google org chart, excuse me. Tiny bit of tweaking and customization, be able to bring that in, add that listener in there, and go ahead and interact with that. So that's a really, really powerful tool. So these are two examples. There's just millions of different examples. If you go out and look at D3 or C3 objects, you can certainly find, or if your organization actually creates their own, you can leverage those as well. So the benefit would be that you can manage your data. All your data resides within a common environment, and then you're using, maybe a specialized object to go ahead and display that data. Okay, so the one last thing that I wanted to circle back with was calculations. So Tapan had mentioned something about enhanced calculations. So one of the things I wanted to show was sort of the ease of use of calculations. So if I click on, let me click here. Oops, I don't want to sort by city. Sorry about that. And I go down to product sale. I want to do a new calculation. So, just through a series of clicks, I right-clicked on that measure called product sales. It could have been anything. I have the option to sort of be wizard-driven through some very standard calculations. So things like moving averages, year-to-date, percent difference from a previous period, cumulative totals, year-to-date growth, etc. So it's really nice to be able to kind of walk through that wizard. We certainly have the formula editor for you to go out there and actually go ahead and create very complex calculations if you wanted to, but the point of this is there's a lot of ease of use and a lot of power in these calculations that you can quickly access. All right, so I'm going to cancel that because I've already displayed this one, and this one happens to be data suppression. So this is a new calculation that we have out there, and I want to spend just a minute explaining it because there's a lot of power to it, but it just kind of shows an example of what it is we can do from a calculation standpoint. So if you have a sales organization and you have cities around the world, and then you have sales reps around the world. So there's a total of 406 sales reps in this organization, and the smallest number of sales reps is in Cape Town. There's 2. Now, if you have confidential information, like salaries or maybe sales or some other piece of information that you could easily infer, like if there's 2 people, if I know what my sales are and I know what the total is, I could subtract the 2 and I could figure out what my coworker was making or what their salary was or those kind of things. So what data suppression does is you define a comparison, say, okay, if it's less than, so I set this up as a parameter to also show you that we have these interactive parameters. So if I change this to say 8, okay? The minimum number of sales reps to display is 8. So anything less than 8, I'm going to mask the amount, right? So that's what that star is. So I color-coded it blue just so you could see it easier. A couple things to note. The totals remain the same. So it's not eliminating those amounts from the total. It's just masking them. So if you want to define a minimum number of people that you have in an organization before you show a total, or it doesn't have to be people, just some other measure before you show a total, this is a great way to do it. There's a lot of power in this data suppression. And you'll notice, as I slide through here and I change this, I actually set up the minimum for this to 4. Seemed logical that you don't want to go too low. And you'll notice that there's a dynamic number within this text that's tied in with whatever my parameter value is there. So with that, well, I think I've gone through and covered off what I wanted to show sort of big picture-wise. So I've gone through and showed the reporting and dashboard, a little bit of predictive analytics, showed the power of location analytics that we have in here now. With that, I think what I want to do is turn it back over to Tapan. And if you want to sort of wrap things up from a information standpoint, that would be great.
Thank you, Steve, for showcasing some of the visual analytics capabilities and how can it help our customers and prospects as they set on this path for business intelligence and analytics and getting the value from their data. To wrap up this webinar, let me summarize some of the key benefits our customers can achieve from SAS Visual Analytics and some of the key takeaways. The first one, of course, is that we want you to be agile. Of course, you have competitors, you have customers who are, and your partners who are demanding, who are changing their preferences on day-to-day kind of basis. And so we want your business intelligence and analytics initiative to be agile also. So how can the tools help, how can SAS help in creating that content and sharing those insights to meet your business needs in a very quick and agile kind of a manner, and give you that flexibility and put that flexibility in hands of the business users and the analysts and the stakeholders who have to take decisions. And as you compare that flexibility, your IT is going to come into that equation. And of course, they are, their needs are around governance. So how can you balance that flexibility with governance so that you can promote that trust, that reuse, and that consistency? So having that ability to monitor what different users are doing, having that ability to measure which reports, dashboards, exploration, analytic models are being used on a consistent basis, and how can you promote that? How can you avoid that chaos and the silos is the key factor in order to get success and have the balance between the flexibility and the governance aspect of it. And then finally, from a scalability point of view, again, scalability is not just from a data and the user scalability point of view. SAS Visual Analytics allows you to grow in a small, single machine kind of deployments and take it up to your big data kind of needs for distributed kind of deployments. And if you have your needs around, cloud and public cloud and private cloud, we can deploy in public or private cloud. So the purpose over there is to meet your current needs and anticipate your future needs and grow with you from a deployment and from scalability kind of a standpoint. So those are some of the key kind of benefits or key takeaways from a product standpoint. So at this point, I thank you for your time and attention during this webinar. We hope that you found it useful and will join with us in future webinars. If you need more information on SAS Visual Analytics, you can visit www.sas.com/VA. You can sign up for a free trial or look at our software demos and refer our customer success stories and the other collateral items we have. Before we pass it on for questions, I wanted to quickly remind that you can interact with experts from SAS through a variety of different social media kind of channels. At this point, I am going to pass it on back to the moderator, Bill, for Q&A, and let's open up for questions.
Well, Tapan, Steve, thanks for that excellent presentation. So we'll get started with today's Q&A session, and I want to thank the audience for their participation. We've had a lot of questions that have come in, and we'll do our best to get through all of them in the time remaining. So during this Q&A session, I'll leave up this screen with contact information for Tapan and Steve if you'd like to contact them following today's webinar. So let's get started. Tapan, Steve, one of the things the audience is asking about, in addition to what you demonstrated, apparently they have a business that is heavily reliant on integrating social media data, and wanted to know if VA would allow them to analyze that as part of their work stream, and what data streams from social media analytics are available through VA.
Okay, yeah, this is Steve. I can take that. So when I went to that screen to import data, there was the local files, and then below that was social. I blew right past it and didn't expand it. But in there, you can access Twitter, Facebook, Google Analytics, YouTube, and Google Drive are the social data types. And so when you would want to import data from one of those, you would click on one. So let's say you click on Twitter, and then it brings up your sign-in screen for Twitter. So then you put in your Twitter credentials. And then once that comes up, then you would say, well, what is it that you want to search on? I want to search on this hashtag, or I want to search on, this user, whatever it happens to be. So there's a tight integration with those social media data sources that I mentioned. And like I said, it would pop up that sign-in screen directly. So you would have to bring your own credentials into that other service. But once you do, we integrate tightly with it.
Well, Steve, thanks for that answer. Now, there were a number of can it do this, can it do that questions, and I'm going to present these to you kind of one at a time, and we'll kind of run through a checklist here. So first, I guess the most obvious is can Visual Analytics work as a standalone on top of non-SAS data sources like Hadoop, or does it need to interact only with other SAS software?
No, it can tightly integrate with pretty much every data source out there. Hadoop especially, but pretty much all the other primary databases. And if not, we have one of those, ODBC or some other driver to access it if it's a unique data source. But we can certainly integrate with any data source that's out there.
Okay, thank you. And then further, is there a blending tool native within VA, or do I need to do my blending beforehand, and can that be a combination of both relational and NoSQL data sources?
When it comes to blending, so SAS as an organization has a lot of data management tools and very sophisticated ones. Within SAS Visual Analytics itself, it has a data preparation tool, and it might be able to do some of the blending. I don't know if it would be able to do everything that you're looking for. It can do basic transformations and some data quality and some data cleansing and things like that. But we also have other tools within the SAS umbrella to be able to do a lot of those other data blending types of activities.
Okay, thank you. And then there was a lot of interest particularly in the capability of VA to do data prep. So I'd like you to expand on that, but at the same time, would you also be specific? For example, does VA natively, for example, recognize differences, say, in state abbreviations, the difference between AZ and ARIZ and the fully spelled out word Arizona, or is that something I have to do in prep?
What you would do is you would do that within Visual Analytics, within the data prep tool. One of the things that you can do, one of the data quality routines you could do is standardization, and that's where you would catch that. So if it was typed in AZ, ARIZ, period, et cetera, all the different variations of that, the standardization would be done in that data prep, and then it would be consistent, and then you'd be able to sort of reference it as a geography. So that would be all encompassed within this.
Terrific. Okay, thank you. And then finally, we didn't talk much about actually pushing the results of this out as dashboards, but an audience member is interested to know, once it's pushed out as a dashboard, does the information automatically update? Does it update on a streaming basis? Is it batch, or how do you plan for that?
That can be handled on any interval that you as an organization want to do. So what you have is you basically have a report definition of that dashboard, and then you have a data source that feeds into that dashboard. So when you open up the dashboard, you're going to get the most recent view of the data. So as an organization, you would determine, do I want to update this data once a month, once a week, once a day, every 5 minutes, whatever frequency, and we can support that, right, as far as the data side of it. And then when you're in a dashboard, then you would go ahead and whenever you access that dashboard or refresh that dashboard, you would see the most recent information, most current information.
Okay, thank you. Now, you did show the capability of VA to do some aggregations pretty much automatically, and there are a couple of questions around its ability to do computations. So can you tell us more about what aggregations or complex calculations are native to VA and which ones we need to do external to the app?
Oh boy, I don't have the list in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of aggregations like sum and average and deviations and errors and variance and those kind of, skewness and variety of different kinds of calculations and aggregations are already available within VA. So it's a matter of what type of business problem you're trying to solve. And so we can send the list of those aggregations which are included in VA to the person who had asked that question.
Terrific. Well, thank you. Now, there was a specific question from an audience member that about during your demonstration, you showed a time series forecast, and they were curious to know what SAS procedure had been used to create that, and was that native to VA?
Yes, the procedure is, well, within VA you'd create a forecast, and under the covers it runs 6 different forecasting algorithms, and I don't have them off the top of my head, but they're like Winters additive and Winters multiplicative. There's 6 of them that it runs simultaneously against the data and your underlying factors that you have, and it comes back and it says, okay, this is the champion forecast. So that's all native within Visual Analytics, those 6 forecasting methods.
Okay. Now, as a final question, it appears that while some of the audience members are data scientists and very sophisticated in their understanding of this, that others are wondering about the democratization and want to be able to allow their business analysts to use this directly. Can you just comment about what level of sophistication a non-data scientist business analyst can achieve with this versus someone who is more professionally trained?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, it is democratization of analytics is really the goal of this, so that it's a GUI, it's a drag and drop environment to be able to go ahead and bring your data elements into the type of predictive analytics that you're trying to do, whether that's a decision tree or some sort of regression or something like that. So creating the models is you've got guardrails on there, right? So you can go ahead and drag in your elements and it'll return the results, and then if you don't like those results or if you want to augment those results, you can bring in other data elements, subtract data elements, and rerun the models. And then you can create multiple models, and you can do comparisons, and you do model comparisons, and then you can get a champion of all those different ones. So I know that was sort of a roundabout way, but sort of to answer that, you don't necessarily need, definitely don't need to have a PhD in statistics to be able to do this. It's meant to be sort of that business analyst that's getting their feet wet into the world of predictive analytics. And Tapan, I'm not sure if you had anything to add to that.
No, I think that's on the right track. I mean, the only thing I would add is that the purpose why we had added self-service analytics, like the forecasting example, is that we want the software to select the best forecast depending on the data and the problem you're trying to solve. So those guide rails is the concept is important here. So capabilities like decision trees or word clouds and scenario analysis, which are included in visual analytics, the purpose over there is for the non-technical people to step into the realm of analytics and gain expertise, be more mature, and try to apply analytics on their day-to-day basis and use it for solving different types of problems. So that's the purpose of why we are bringing self-service analytics to the visual analytics paradigm.
Tapan, Steve, hey, thank you. Great answers to some very good questions. And for those of you that asked questions today that weren't answered, we'll be sending all the unanswered questions to Tapan, Steve, and the SAS team so they can follow up with you after today's webinar. I have just a couple of quick announcements. If you'd please mark your calendars for December 12th. That's our next DSC webinar, which will be 7 lessons from the pioneers of data visualization. And that will be presented by Tableau. Also remember that today's taping will be available for on-demand viewing later today, and you can find that on the home page of Data Science Central in the Webinar tab located at the top of the page. Well, this brings today's webinar to a close. I'd like to thank our audience for their attendance and thoughtful questions. A special thanks again to SAS for their sponsorship, as well as to our speakers today, Tapan Patel and Steve Melgren, for their insights into today's topic. This is Bill Voorhees. I'm very pleased to have been your host for today's event. I look forward to seeing you all again on December 12th. Have a great day.